you go in a candy store, if there's only like 3 candy bar options, pretty easy, you can make a quick decision. If there's like 100 candy bars, you're going to be looking for a long time. And that's a little bit what it feels like with developing your vision, because if you're really to approach things with an idea of nothing off the table, it means that you're able to explore a lot of different options and allow your mind to just be creative and feel the freedom. It's very much an abundance mindset that allows that freedom to take place and to explore those options. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Lifestyle Practice Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Derek Williams. I'm glad to be with you. Really excited for today's episode. We have Dr. Chad Christiansen with us today. How are you doing, Chad?
I'm doing really well, Derek. It's fun to be here. It's fun to be on the podcast. So I'm super excited for our topic today. So it should be good.
Yeah, I agree. Chad and I are both in Colorado, actually, right now. I just figured out Chad's originally from the Denver area, and I'm in kind of close to Telluride right now. And so I didn't realize we'd both be in Colorado, but that's kind of fun.
Yep, pretty cool. Yeah, you're in the pretty part of the country, or in the part of the state. So I hope you're enjoying the mountains.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my wife. So there's a small town called Ouray, and there's like hot springs there, and we were in the hot springs last night. We had a date, and we were like kind of just like looking around. It's a really cool place where there's just mountains on both sides of you, really close, and it's just this kind of like small strip of a town right in the middle. And we were just like sitting there, just like kind of in awe at the beauty, and kind of thinking like, oh, I wonder if all of Colorado's like this. Like, obviously we've been to other parts of Colorado that are like different and stuff, but it'll be interesting for us to kind of travel around and see what it's like. We're hoping that everywhere is like here.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good part of the state. There's a ton to do in Colorado, a ton of mountains, lots of towns like that, which is pretty cool. So it's fun exploring all those mountain towns and the different activities and stuff. But yeah, then there's the east side of the state, which is not so picturesque. But yeah, every time I go visit the mountains, I'm like, why am I not here? Like, why is this not why wasn't this the landing place? But
right.
We all end up where we're supposed to be. So
yeah. So for those of you that are listening, I've been friends with Chad and talking to Chad for a long time. We actually both went to dental school at Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska. Chad was a year behind me. And we actually didn't talk a ton during dental school. We were acquaintances and friendly, but it was when I had been out, we'd both been out for a couple years, and Chad, you were looking to purchase your first practice and reached out to me, and we worked together in that practice. So instead of me kind of talking about it, I'm going to like kind of turn it over to you to share a little bit about your background first off, in just like kind of our relationship, kind of what we've done together, how you've grown, where you're at now, and then I'll kind of tell listeners kind of what we're doing on these couple episodes together.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. Like you said, we went to Creighton. I graduated in 2017. It was awesome there. Yeah. The only things I really remember, Derek, is we like played some pickup basketball together once. I think you came over to my house and my wife cut your hair in our basement once or a couple times.
That's right.
Like that.
That's right.
But yeah, no, had I known a little bit more, maybe we would have talked a little bit more at the time. But yeah, no, I was a couple of years out, or actually I was about a year out. I was an associate at a practice that I wanted to buy. Of course, that didn't really work out. So I jumped ship and went and looked for my own practice to buy. And it was about then when I kind of realized that like I didn't really know what I was doing. You know what I mean? Didn't know all the ins and outs of practice ownership and that transition and all the, the people I needed on board. And, so that was the first time I actually ever listened to a podcast, was listening to some podcasts, and I heard you on a podcast, and I was like, hey, I know that guy. I know Derek. I remember him from from school. And so I just called and reached out to you, and I was just going to kind of pick your brain, like, hey, how did your transition go? How's practice ownership? Just some kind of general questions, just seeing if I can get some advice. And I do kind of remember that conversation because I was talking with you and kind of just asking you questions, trying to figure out, what I should do. And it was about halfway through the conversation when I realized that you were a coach with TLP. And it's kind of interesting finding out, like, whoa, well, so I kind of wondered if you were going to send me a bill after the end of that initial first phone call, kind of finding out that that was what you did. Yeah, you actually kind of helped coach dentists and kind of helped coach people through transitions and growth and things like that. So, yeah, and then of course that's eventually I did hire you, and you are my coach, and it was awesome. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning. It was kind of random, but no, super glad I reached out and changed my trajectory in a big way, which I think is kind of what we're talking about today, as far as understanding where we're going and what we want and how we can get it through our dental practices.
So, Chad, just talk briefly about your history in your first practice. You sold it. Um, give listeners a little bit of like, what did you do with that first practice? When did you sell? And then just talk a little bit about the growth in your second practice.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is, I didn't really know what I necessarily wanted out of dental practice. My dad's a dentist, so I mean, that's kind of all I really knew is that, he owned his own practice, and I thought, well, I'm gonna own my own practice someday. And so yeah, after I left my associateship, I didn't have a job, so I kind of felt a little pressure to, do something. And so I found this smaller 3 operatory practice in Colorado, and just kind of went for it. I analyzed the numbers as best I could with the limited knowledge I did. And of course, that was another point I wish maybe I had known you a little bit better, Derek, and kind of understood the things you were doing as far as understanding a good opportunity. But I kind of just, like I said, with what I knew, I went ahead and bought this little office. And honestly, it was great. It was kind of a great first step, kind of a great little starter practice as far as jumping into ownership. Something I could manage. Of course, it definitely had its ups and downs. I remember my very first day in practice. Of course, I only had one hygienist and one assistant, one front desk, and my assistant comes up and says, "Well, I'm quitting. Good luck." And and I'm sitting there like 2 hours into ownership, like, well, okay, well, what do I do now anyway? But so yeah, ups and downs, and then trying to figure out what I wanted from this practice, where we wanted to go. We grew that practice with the help of Derek and some of the principles of TLP. I mean, we almost doubled that practice in a year or so, year and a half. And as we outgrew it, I guess that's when I had to kind of decide where I was headed next. Was looking to expand the footprint because I didn't have the physical space or the capacity to do more dentistry out of this little office that I'd bought. And of course, that was surprising to me. It only took a year to get to that point. But yeah, no, and that's kind of when my wife and I started reflecting together on more of our personal goals and kind of our personal, vision for our lives. And we have a bunch of kids. Had a bunch of kids at that time. And we're kind of trying to decide if, we wanted to go into more debt and lay down deeper roots and kind of commit more to this area that we were in. And that's actually when we decided that maybe not. Maybe this wasn't the spot for us. This wasn't necessarily the practice or the situation in practice that was going to take us where we wanted to go. And so we looked for a different area. And long story short, I actually was planning on doing a startup. I did some demographic research. I understood a little bit better this time, maybe a good opportunity. Derek you helped me understand, maybe what a better, situation would look like. And, but eventually ended up finding an acquisition in Wyoming. And that's where I am now. And so decided that was going to be better for our family, a better practice situation, bigger practice, more opportunity for growth. And again, kind of fit the why and fit the vision a little bit more for our family. And that's where we are now. In 2020, I moved into this practice up in Wyoming, started there, and we've been growing that location. We've been growing our practice, for the last 4 years. And again, we haven't doubled it, but we're getting pretty good. We're getting pretty close. Getting pretty close to doubling this practice. And then, and at this point, actually, we're looking at even doing another expansion and moving into another space. So when I first showed up at this practice, we had 5 operatories. Eventually built out two more, had space for two more, built out to seven. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We have the 7 operatories, and we're about to start construction on a 14 operatory office, about a quarter mile down the road. So yeah, no, we keep moving and keep growing, and it's been amazing, and it's interesting to see kind of again, how it's grown and changed, and the different choices and pivots we've made to get where we are. And if you had asked me 4 or 5 years ago, if this is where I'd be, I don't know if this is where I'd tell you I'd be, but honestly, being where we are has been pretty awesome. So we're pretty blessed and enjoying quite a bit of it.
Very cool. It's been really cool for me as kind of an outsider to be able to look and to see your growth. Um, you know, I think anytime, even people, commenting on my growth, looking back and listening to me when I was like my first year in ownership compared to now, like there's obviously a big difference. There's a big difference in the level of confidence and the experience in working through different situations and stuff like that. And that's been evident with you as well, where, you started out with a small practice, and like at that time it just feels like that's your world and that's your opportunity and everything that's going on, and you've just kind of continued to scale up. You sold that, bought a bigger practice that was doing more, brought on an associate, and now you're basically doing that again, where we're building out a larger practice with the again with the idea of more associates, and kind of this picture for you to continue to scale back, which kind of leads us to what we're going to be talking about today. So, Chad, you and I were kind of talking, and you kind of threw out some ideas, and we're talking about some things that you really enjoyed in like the TLP process. And I was thinking, we both were talking about, hey, it'd be cool to do some episodes around this. And so this is kind of unique, where you kind of built out the structure for what you thought has been valuable to you and what you've experienced. And so I'm kind of letting you take the lead a little bit with some of the points that have resonated with you and how we kind of approach these topics. So today the focus is essentially vision. What does that look like? We talk about it a lot, and so there's a few points basically. What does that exactly mean? Why is it important? And then how does vision change over time? And then how do we try and enjoy the journey along the way? So those are kind of the points that we're going to go through. So I'm going to kind of throw the ball in your court, Chad, and kind of let you talk through some of the things that you feel like have been important to you, what you've learned about yourself as far as developing your own vision. And we'll kind of just go back and forth, kind of working through those different points, and just kind of talking about our own experiences in this regard.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited because I'll be honest. Yeah, we kind of when we started brainstorming that idea, and what do we want to talk about, or what was important to me. I mean, yeah, no, this is for sure the biggest. I mean, the biggest effect that working with you and TLP had on me is just opening up my eyes, just being able to see more, understand more of the opportunity. And I guess that's what vision is. That's kind of what we're talking about a little bit. Because kind of like I alluded to, I wish I had known you, Derek, and some of the things you were doing in dental school. You know what I mean? I didn't know about the ambitious, students, group, that kind of a thing. I mean, I think I'm like, I was like most students. I didn't necessarily know what was out there, what the profession had as far as possibilities, and what kind of opportunity there was to grow and kind of develop my life and where I was headed. Because that was the big thing. I remember when I became a client of yours. One of the first things you send out is that questionnaire that just kind of asks I think the big questions at the top are, what is your why? Why do you do the things you do? And then what is your vision for your practice? Like, where is this headed, and how is this going to help you, reach your goals for your why? And I mean, just real quick, I mean, for me, and I think for a lot of people, depending on your situation, my why is my family. You know what I mean? I've got a family, I've got a bunch of kids. I want to, build a good life for them, a good life for ourselves. And so that's kind of why I do the things I do. And then of course, the next question is, what is the vision? How can I help my profession and my career and my dental practice? become what I want it to become, to help, support that why, to help support my family and what we wanted. And again, I just remember talking with you about that, and I had no idea. You know what I mean? I had no idea what the choices were, what the menu was, and it was really cool. Obviously, hearing you and hearing about your opportunities and kind of your growth and what you did with your practice. And I mean, I guess I'll just be honest. I mean, that was kind of, I mean, that was big and shiny for me. That was like, holy cow, you can accomplish this. This is a possibility, as far as income and time off and investments and freedom and things like that. And obviously being able to retire and make work optional, so early in your career. Yeah, I mean, they got the wheels turning for sure. And I remember just thinking like, well, man, yeah, I want that too. I want what Derek has. Which, as I've kind of gone through these different transitions and kind of learned and different things, I've kind of realized that maybe that, wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted, wasn't exactly the personal, vision that I had for my life. And maybe I was going to try and do it in a different way to help, again, to support my why as far as practice ownership and developing my professional career. But yeah, I remember just, in that little practice at the beginning, talking with you, Derek, and, we were trying to come up with goals and, what we wanted the day to look like, how much we were going to produce in a day. And I don't know, I'll just throw numbers out there, what I mean? I don't know if people can relate, but I remember, talking about like, man, if we could produce, $3,000 a day, like, how big that would be. Like if we could consistently just hit this mark, have a daily goal and produce, this much money in a year and that kind of thing. And just thinking like, well, what could this do for my family? What could this do for my career? Where could we take this? And then I remember when we bumped the goal to 5, like, if we were going to do 5,000 a day, we'd be $1 million practice. And I remember thinking like, man, that's impossible. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's just, I don't see how that could, I don't see how I can do that with my own 2 hands and, with, what I've got in front of me. And of course we met that goal in like, 3 or 4 months or something like that. Just making changes and tweaks and things like that. And again, just making those steps and like kind of seeing like that, my vision changed so much, like, holy cow, there's even more, you know what I mean? And I think you talk to people all the time, or you've brought up the phrase, nothing off the table, Derek. And it took me a while to figure out what that means. I mean, I don't know, Derek, in your experience, when you say things like that and you say, nothing off the table, as far as your vision, what is your typical reaction you get from people, or how, are people able to understand what that means? You know what I mean? What kind of response do you usually get from that kind of phrase?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting because not that idea, don't take anything off the table. Let all the options, let your mind be free to explore. In some ways, we kind of have to look at others as examples and see what is possible. Sometimes it's hard for us to just think, okay, well, what's realistic, what's not, what do I even like, kind of what you were saying, like what do I even want my life to look like, it's almost like, you go in a candy store. If there's only like 3 candy bar options, it's pretty easy, you can make a quick decision. If there's like 100 candy bars, you're going to be looking for a long time. And that's a little bit what it feels like with developing your vision. Because if if you're really to approach things with an idea of nothing off the table, it means that you're able to explore a lot of different options and allow your mind to just be creative and feel the freedom. It's very much an abundance mindset that allows that freedom to take place and to explore those options. So for for a lot of people in that situation, when we explore that question and we develop the vision, a lot of times it is a lot of clients do develop a vision based on someone else that has kind of modeled it for them. And I think that's very helpful in the beginning when you're trying to build this out and to develop it. Because if someone can pave the path, or a path that you like and that you would like to implement in your own life, being able to kind of like see yourself on that path allows you to envision it. If you know someone else has done it, then you know that it's possible, And so it helps you to feel like, okay, this is more realistic. I could do this. If so and so did it, I could do this. So that can be helpful. And then as you start to make traction, kind of like you talked about with your goal of 3,000 and then raising to 5,000, it's a little bit of this back and forth between building out the vision and seeing what is possible, and then growing in actuality for what you can produce. And then as you do that, it then can raise your vision of what continues to be possible. So it's this, I think of it all the time. My coach Steve Hardison talks about like the chicken and the egg, that you can do one thing and it can lead to something else, and you can also focus on that something else, and that can in turn help build out that possibility as well. And that's a little bit of what we're talking about here. You can develop a vision and you can work towards that, and as you work towards it, it helps you to see the vision more. And so it kind of works. It works both ways. So as you explore your mental capacity to be creative and to build this out, and as you make progress, they both influence each other and help you to continue to grow.
Yeah, no, I think I've definitely noticed that in my practice or my professional trajectory. That as I understand more, the vision tends to grow. You know what I mean? It tends to change a little bit. And I don't know. I think I used to fight against that a little bit. I used to kind of think that oh yeah, when I sit down with you, Derek, and we kind of figure out what's the vision, where we're trying to get to, what I almost would feel. I'm maybe not guilty, but I almost felt like I was doing it wrong if I didn't necessarily like keep that vision, like keep it, laser focus, you know what I mean? And then I kind of realized that, well, no, I know more, I understand more, I have more opportunity now, you know what I mean? And it would kind of help, flesh out that vision a little bit more. Cause I think the core principles were always the same, to create choices, create options, create freedoms, just kind of how we went about it, you know what I mean? And kind of the steps we would take more or less pivoted as I grew and as we understood a little bit more and as we worked together and as you taught me more, which I was kind of the biggest thing I wanted to share today, is that my vision is completely different now than my first practice. I used to think, and again, I hope it doesn't, it's not too specific, but I hope it's relatable to people. You know what I mean? I saw what you did, Derek, and I wanted to do the same thing, kind of like you just said. I was like, man, he has an amazing income. He's plenty of time with his family, and he has choices. He can more or less, I guess retire when the time is right and when he wants to. And that's what you've done. And I remember thinking, going through those steps, I want to do the same thing. I'm going to grow this practice. I'm going to produce. I'm going to kind of get all the fulfillment I can out of it. I'm going to work and enjoy my work, and then be able to go home. And then eventually at some point, I'm going to be able to make it optional. And that's going to be the best road for me. That's going to be the best road for my family. And it's been interesting because even over the last, couple of years, as we've talked, Derek, I've kind of vented some of that frustration to you that like, I'm just not doing that. I'm not doing it like you did it. You know what I mean? It's actually, that's kind of been one of the biggest, realizations for me, even in the last year, that, actually that's probably okay and probably best. That's actually what I want. You know what I mean? That the way I've worked my vision, I'm not set to retire next year. I'll tell you that. But I have been able to fulfill my why so much better in the last couple of years as I've grown my dental practice, as we've produced more, as I've had more associates, as days at the office have become less and less hectic, as I've been able to take more time off without closing the office. As I've been able to, we've built quite the life for ourselves where we are. And I haven't necessarily, been saving tons of money and investing and preparing to, more or less stop working. But like I said, this has actually turned out to be better for us in the long run. And I don't know how you feel about that as things change, Derek, but as I grow, but that's kind of the way it's been.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, it reminds me of even it was a couple coaching sessions ago that we were having a conversation, and you kind of brought this up to me where you said you kind of shared what you just kind of said, where you were like, man, I feel like, this is something that I should be doing. It was with financial goals. You were like, I feel like, I should be budgeting in this way. I should be investing more. And, you're kind of like going down through these things. And, um, I started to hear a little bit of that guilt that you were talking about, where there's kind of that comparison of, well, and I think I'm just going to share exactly my thoughts, and then you tell me if I'm off or
Yeah.
what's correct or not. Um, but I think there was kind of a lot of thoughts in your mind of like, well, Derek did it this way, and he was aggressive with investing and like kept lifestyle expenses lower and stuff like that, and so I should be doing that. Um, and I kind of felt like I was kind of picking up on that, and I was like, hey, do you care if I share something? Like, can I share a
Mhm.
thought? And you just be open to it. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but just be open to it. you know is it possible that you are actually really happy with your progress and with what you're spending your money on and with how much you're investing, but that it's only when you compare yourself that you start to feel that guilt and start to feel like, you know it's something that you should be doing differently, but in actuality you are happy with how things are going?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate there, Derek. No, yeah, yeah, no, that was a pretty cool realization for me, and you know, yeah, not to indicate or make it seem like I was being irresponsible, or you know what I mean. I just wasn't following the goals, or wasn't trying to strive for the vision, but it was interesting to just realize that I've got a different lifestyle. You know what I mean? And I think that's the whole premise for the lifestyle practice, is that we are able to see our lives and see our whys and develop the lifestyle that we want. And I just have a different lifestyle than you, Derek. I'm not going to live in a trailer with my kids and travel all over the country. Which, and again, it's about choices and opportunities, and that's still, more or less what I want. But it was super cool to have that realization that, I've got a different lifestyle, that, I'm going to work in a different way. I'm going to work in a different practice, and my work days look different, my work weeks and years. The day that I finally retire is probably going to look different. But to kind of come to that realization that, what, that's okay, that's fine with me, that this is kind of the direction that I've taken, and I find a lot of fulfillment in it. And I think that was what you helped me see in that conversation, that like, you actually like this, that you're actually pretty happy, and that the only source of your discomfort and your quote unhappiness would be the fact that maybe you're just doing it different than you think you should because of what other people have done. So yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out, Derek, because yeah, no, that's definitely seems like the case. And it's just kind of lowered my stress level a little bit lately, especially as we grow out this bigger office. Again, just kind of seeing how this bigger office is going to play into our future, and how it's going to open up more freedoms and more opportunities. It's going to be a ton of work, of course, but that's kind of the way things go, and that's the things that TLP teaches, that it's going to take a lot of effort. But again, that's my vision. That's what I want. You know what I mean? That's what I want for my future. It's what I want for my practice, for my family. And it's pretty cool to have watched that change. Like I said, over, starting out in my little 3-op practice that had no room in it. Now we're moving to this thing that's, 14 offertories, and we're going to have, obviously multiple doctors, and just a lot more people, a lot more leadership, a lot more management, that kind of stuff. But again, yeah, I'm excited for my vision. I want this practice to help take me where I want to go, and it's going to open up the freedoms that I want. And it's not going to be, retirement next year, or living in an RV, but I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And it kind of goes back to kind of our second point of all of this, is like, how does your why, how does your vision change over time? And I think that's part of the beauty of this whole process. I think sometimes we think, that if we start out with a vision and we don't accomplish that vision exactly, then it should be perceived as some kind of a failure. And the reality is that it's all part of the process, and that the what's the purpose of developing a vision? And I say the same thing about goals. Is the purpose of developing a vision to actually make the vision happen, or is it to help you to progress? Is it to help you, to give you new ideas and to expand your what you visualize as being possible in your life? And I think that's what it is. The vision is just growth in a mental aspect that allows you to see new opportunities that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So I think your example, like even in the last few months of talking about and having, a vision, where you may have felt a little bit conflicted, like, oh, my vision should be this, but it's actually this, and you didn't actually realize it a little bit. You could tell that there's a little bit of conflict there, but like, I don't know exactly why does this feel off? And it's because the two are not congruent. You have kind of someone else's vision or an idea that you feel that you should have, and then you have your own, and they don't exactly go together. And that, again, that's the beauty of it, and that's the beauty of um, the lifestyle practice approach, is that we're not telling anyone what your vision should be. That it's up to you to decide and to determine what you want this to look like, and then let's get after it. Let's go
Mm-hmm.
build it out and see how we can make it happen.
Yep, no, and that's definitely been my experience. And again, I think I've said it a few times already, but yeah, I mean, that was so amazing for me to just be able to see the possibilities, to see what was out there, what was, what my future could look like. And so, yeah, no, it's a big shout out and a big thank you to TLP and to you, Derek, for helping me flesh that out and be able to see that and grow. And yeah, no, I think that kind of, like you alluded to, I think that definitely helps me recognize how important just the growth is and kind of the journey is. And that's kind of the other point we were talking about, is that I think in a lot of ways, again, like you said, that idea kind of provided a little conflict in me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not doing what I think I should. I'm just not doing what I think I should. And I kind of held on to that for so long that it kind of, it wasn't depressing or anything, but it had a negative effect on my work, and it had a negative effect on how I viewed what I was doing. Just thinking like I just wasn't quite cutting it, as far as this vision that again wasn't necessarily congruent with my own. And it really kind of put a damper on the journey for me. It put a damper on the fact that I was growing. You know what I mean? The fact that I was achieving so much success and making so many steps and in my professional career, and my life was just getting better. You know what I mean? My life was getting better. My opportunities and family time and fulfillment was getting better, but I almost diluted that down, or I almost made it negative because I wasn't quite doing this other thing or as far as I thought I should be in other areas. And so no, I honestly have been quote enjoying the journey a lot more here, even in this the last few months, than I maybe ever have in practice ownership and in my career, which is interesting because it's gotten a lot more complicated lately, as far
Yeah.
as building out a bigger office and taking on such a lot more managerial responsibilities and working with people. The stress hasn't necessarily gone away, but the fact that I haven't compounded the stress by with something more or less whispering in my ear that I'm not doing it right or I'm not doing it good enough. So no, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I enjoy, like you said, Derek, I enjoy the growth. I enjoy getting to that next step and then seeing how my vision will grow and where my next steps will take me and where the next opportunities will open up. Because I think that's a big thing, is just being ready for that opportunity, ready for the next step, and recognizing how that will incorporate into the vision and not letting something else kind of stand in the way.
Yeah. It's interesting. As you were talking, it reminded me a little bit of my dad shared this experience with me recently. I've shared a little bit in the podcast in the past about my relationship with my dad, and that I really enjoy talking to him. Like there's only a few people in my life that I feel like I can share things and expect very transparent and radical candor and honesty. And my dad is one of those people, and I enjoy talking to him because I know he's going to give me his honest thoughts and feedback. Anyway, it's got a little bit of a side note, but so I've talked a lot about my journey with mindfulness, and this idea of there is no destination; it's all journey. And he told me he shared a little bit of his experience in falling into that trap. Um, he said, I thought, I've had so many experiences in my life where I thought, oh, once I get here, that's when I've made it. And so he talked about, graduating college and like getting like a really good job. My dad is the only, he's one of five kids. And with his two parents, he's the only person in his family to graduate with a college degree. Anyway, so he thought like once I get a good stable job, that's when I'll have made it. He got to that point, and then there was kind of a new checkpoint that was set. Once I have a house, once we have like a house for our family, oh, that's when we'll be set up forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny one was once he was in the house, he realized that kept doing the same thing, and he said, "Oh, once I get a shed to put all of like my tools and stuff in, that's when I'll have made it." It reminds me of Eckhart Tolle. He says the ego wants to want. And that's essentially what's happening in our mind is if we develop this thought process of um, I'll have made it once I X, then that's basically the headspace that we're going to be living in. If we're living in that now, we're going to be living in that in the future. And that's this idea and what you're talking about and what I'm hearing, Chad, is when we can embrace this idea that we're just always going to be striving for growth because that's what we enjoy. Once we recognize that, it's like, oh wow, if that's true, then I'm already where I want to be. And I'm going to grow today. I'm going to grow tomorrow. I'm going to grow in 10 years, 20 years for the rest of my life. Like, so for the rest of my life, I'm where I want to be. And there's an incredible amount of peace and satisfaction and fulfillment that comes from that, because at that point you stop seeking for something that is outside of yourself and you realize that everything that you have is already here.
Yeah, that was very well said, Derek, and I think that encapsulates my feelings exactly. Pretty cool because again, I've that's something that you've kind of developed and understood, recently, and I think that's again something I'm still understanding more and more just recently. That yeah, no, I mean you are where you want to be, considering if you truly are striving for the things you want and you take the time to look around you and instead of always moving the goalposts like they say, that you recognize that I am accomplishing the things I want to accomplish, and I can have the fulfillment now. I can have the peace, like you said, now, which is pretty cool. And it's amazing to be in a profession that we are that has that kind of opportunity for us, and that we're able to be the authors of our own destiny and our own success. And yeah, no, I think finding that joy in that journey and recognizing that it's not always about the next step or not always about the next, reaching the next financial goal or whatever, that, you can live the lifestyle you want today and forever, which is again, very empowering and pretty cool. And yeah, like I said, coming to that realization has been huge, and it's been interesting watching all the steps that it's taken to kind of lead up to that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, in your perspective. So now that you're several years in, you're on your second practice. You're again continuing to scale up. What would you tell yourself in the past? Like if you could go back and tell yourself something in regards to vision, that you now know that you didn't know in the past, that you feel like was kind of like a crucial, that could have been something that could have helped, and maybe this will help relate for other listeners that are kind of in that situation. What is the piece of advice that you would give to yourself?
That's a very good question because I don't know. I'm trying to think of, if I could narrow it down to one idea or one, piece of advice. Like you said, I think, I've kind of said that I'm very jealous of the fact that, you were, so active in studying, what I mean, what was possible, what kinds of opportunities were out there, what you could make your life look like, what kind of timelines there could be for certain steps in in your professional life. I think if I had one thing to say to myself, uh, again, it's hard to, how do you open up your mind, open your mind, do the research, look around, see what other dentists were doing. I don't know, visit other dental offices, maybe, I don't know, talk to more professionals, down the road, further down the road than I was. I mean, maybe that's all you can do, I suppose, just being able to see more, see what others were doing and kind of help that formulate those ideas a little bit quicker. I don't know. What would you say to yourself, Derek? I don't know if that's the greatest advice, but it's all I can come up with at the moment.
No, I mean, it sounds like what I'm hearing when you're saying that is back to this idea we discussed earlier. Take nothing off the table. Like you're essentially saying, um, how do you do that? How do you take nothing off the table? How do you continue to open your mind to other possibilities? Whether that's through just allowing your own mind to explore, or by surrounding yourself with other people that have done some incredible things. So no, I think that's great advice. Um, I think it's really interesting for me, because yeah, I want to ask you that question, and then you turn around and ask it to me. My thought process, like as I look back on myself in this regard, it's a lot of what we're talking about here with there is no destination. It's all journey. And I think I fell into that similar trap that my dad was in, where it's like, oh, once I get here, then I will have made it. And I was so it's very much Western in my mind. It's very much Western philosophy versus Eastern philosophy, where Western philosophy tells you go out, set big goals, make reach these big accomplishments, and then you'll be happy. And Eastern philosophy is very much no, all the happiness that you need is already inside of you, and if you have that, then that will lead you to growth in some of those external things, but those external things won't define your happiness. And so I very much started out with that Western philosophy, and it benefited me a lot. It helped me to grow and helped me to be really aggressive and to push and to achieve some great things. But now, I'm kind of in the point in life where I recognize, I'm more along the lines of Eastern philosophy that, none of those things matter. Um, the two things that I care about in life are love and growth. And I feel like for the rest of my life, if I can incorporate more ways of loving myself and loving others, and um, I can also continue to grow in a lot of different capacities in life, um, that's all I need. Um, yeah, the money is helpful and it allows me to do a lot of other things and have freedom, but my fulfillment is not dependent on that. So, in regards to your posing that question to me, I think if I could go back, I would tell myself to enjoy the journey more along the way. Some of the most exciting times for me, I think I've shared this before, is when I was when I was in dental school, laying in bed at night, looking up at the dark ceiling, like it's dark, and I'm just staring at the ceiling, wide awake, just thinking of ideas and like really excited for this. I'm like, oh man, my vision, my goals, like all these are going to come into play. Like the rubber is about to hit the road, and that's a really fun spot to be in. And so to look back and recognize that, I'm able to kind of tell that to clients along the way, like, hey, the space that you're in right now, like these experiences in life, you're going to look back with fondness and with a lot of memories in the future. So try and recognize that right now. Try and recognize how lucky you are. So I try and keep that spot now, even where I'm on this kind of like short time frame in life where we're kind of traveling and doing all these things with our kids, and I kind of will step out of my mind and think of you know 10, 20 years from now, I'm going to look back on this time period and be like, wow, I can't believe we did that. That was so incredible. And by doing that, it helps me to see how valuable this time is right now and to just love right where I'm at.
No, that's amazing. No, yeah, you've articulated that very well. Yeah, no, and I totally agree. That's super cool. And yeah, kind of while you were talking, I was thinking about, I do try my best to kind of have that thought in my mind. Sometimes I think about the good old days, you know what I mean? Back when we used to do fun things, or back in dental school, or different, times of growth and different times where we did amazing things in our life, and then trying to transpose that to now that, today are the good old days. And I got to remember that,
Right.
now's the time to enjoy this. Now's the time to recognize the memories we're making, the happiness that we have, and the challenges that, are helping us grow and things like that. So, yep, it's an amazing spot to be in. And I appreciate those thoughts.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Thanks. I appreciate you taking the time and energy to create this. I think that hopefully a lot of people, this is something that can be difficult to talk about experiences, because when we talk about vision, it's very a little bit superficial or supernatural, or it's just ideas that are in our mind. So to be able to articulate that and talk through that, I think can be challenging at times. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of explore and think through this. And I look forward to having you back again on another episode where we can dive into another topic that I think will be a lot of fun, which is just about authenticity, trying to be ourselves, and what that looks like in our careers. So appreciate your time, Chad. If anyone wants to reach out to you to ask questions and learn more about you and your situation, are you willing to do that? Is there a way that they can get in touch with you?
Sure. I don't mind throwing my email out. My email is chadchris9@gmail. So CHADCHRIS number 9 at Gmail. So questions, I'd love to. I super enjoy talking about this stuff. So if anybody wants to keep talking, I'd love it.
Very cool. Thanks, everyone. Hope you got a lot of value out of today's podcast. As always, feel free to reach out to me and ask questions, or let me know, other topics you'd like us to delve into more as well. Derek, DEREK @thelifestylepractice.com. Take care, everyone. Keep crushing it. Nothing off the table, and we will see you next time. Sicker than your average.